everyone, it's Wacky Anime What If here to present you with What If Issei Snapped His Limiter? Let's get into this. Currently, Issei Hyodo is in a dungeon where he's keeping Kurumi chained to a wall with murky water on the floor. Izuku walks towards her and says one thing: "Do you regret anything that you've done?" Immediately she says, I regret it so badly, so just let me go. While Izuku looks into her eyes and says, that was a lie. And let's just say, bad kids get punished for lying. He immediately puts up a shock voltage, and the wires that are in the water, the murky water, immediately start to fry. And Izuku has entire rubber on, so this isn't affecting him. However, Koneko has no such thing. She's feeling all of her nerves being fried slowly, and she immediately looks at him and says, "What do you want? Are you just here to torture me for some sick and perverse idea? Huh, Issei?" While Issei looks at her and says, "No, I'm here to torture you for your sons, and also to get some more information. Where is the meeting going to be held?" While she looks at him and plays dumb and says, "What meeting?" While Issei says, "Do you want me to shock up the voltage to 2,000 volts more?" Immediately she says, "Like that's gonna do anything." And then Issei says, "Alright, then how about 1,000,000 volts?" While she says, "No, that'll kill me. You wouldn't do such a thing, would you, Issei?" While Issei just looks at her and does a sinister smile and says, "I don't know, would I?" And immediately he's getting closer to the switch to raise the voltage. Koneko screams out and says, "No, don't do it. You don't need to do this. I'll talk." And immediately he says, "Oh no, I gave you the choice to talk. You chose not to. So I don't know if what's going to come out of your mouth is a lie or not. So how about I crank up the voltage?" He cranks it up to 1,000 volts. And then to 2,000, to 20,000, 100,000, then all the way up to 1,000,000 volts. Through each volt increase, she starts screaming a little bit louder, until it's 1,000,000, where you can hear blood-curdling screams. She could feel her blood boiling all the way out of her throat, going out of her mouth, puking up vomit and blood, mostly blood. Her eyes are starting to get fried out of the sockets. Her eyes are starting to get hazy, and immediately all that Issei says is, "Maria, could you go ahead and heal our dear Koneko? After all, we wouldn't want her to stay being here really uncomfortable, now would we?" As he walks away and goes all the way to the elevator leading to his penthouse. POV change. Maria was watching as he switched to a sadistic side and was quite brutally torturing Koneko for some information. Maria walks up towards Koneko and starts healing her, while Koneko looks at her and says, "Why are you helping me?" While she looks at her with cold eyes and says, "I'm not helping you, I'm helping Issei. After all, I wouldn't want to help any of you devils anyway. Not after what you've done." While Koneko says, What did we do? What did the devils do?" While she says, "You betrayed Issei. And aside from that, you've burned most of my people, most of my village, and left me as an orphan from a young age, until Issei found me, that is." Immediately, she looks at her and says, "Well, if it's any consolation, I'm not really sorry." Maria immediately punches her in the face, causing a noticeable amount of teeth to go missing from Koneko's left side as she spits them out, and starts laughing maniacally. And Maria says, "I think that he might have broken your mind. You seem a little bit insane now." While she says, "Insane? Do you want to see insane?" She starts maniacally laughing and starts to try to rip her chains off, but they noticeably don't go off. Instead, she gets a little voltage every time she tries to pull them off, as if the chains know she's going to. Issei is currently in the control room in his penthouse, observing from the screen as Koneko's having a mental breakdown, while he's muttering to himself, Good. All I need to do is break her mind and put it back together, and make some pieces rearranged. Then I can use her as a spy. This will be a perfect thing to do." All I have to do is Play the bad guy, then the nice guy. Good cop, bad cop, but in more of an extreme environment, he mutters to himself. And immediately he calls Maria on a radio to tell her to go back up into the control room of the penthouse. While he does some different things in the bottom of the penthouse, or let's say the lower levels. He walks out of the control room, walks down the halls of his penthouse. While walks into the room of his penthouse, the living room, he immediately presses a switch, and an elevator appears behind some bookshelves in the living room. And right when it does, he walks into the elevator. He presses the lowest button that says floor B1. Immediately when he presses it, the elevator descends down rapidly. Once it stops, Issei immediately opens the doors of the elevator because they weren't going fast enough. Issei walks in and sees tons of people with lab coats. He walks up towards someone that he's already helped quite a lot of. He walks towards him and says, "So, Professor Zakiel, are the projects finished? The 3 projects I asked you for." While Zakiel looks at him and says, "Yes, one of them are. The other 2 are still in the experimental phase." While Issei says, "Good. Is it Project Sleeper Agent?" While Zakiel just looks at him and says, "Yes. With this little pill here, whoever consumes it will automatically obey the person's voice that they hear. It isn't facial recognized. It's more of a voice, so you have to actually give her commands, mostly. She'll do things to a certain extent by herself, but most of them will be needed with your authority." While Izuku says, "Is there any other methods?" While he says, "Well, there is this one." He pulls out a syringe and says, "If you give this syringe to her, she'll obey you whenever you speak to her with a code word. Once that code word is said, it turns her into a murder machine. That's unless you're the one that says it. Then if you're the one that says it, you can tell her to do whatever you want, to a certain extent, only if it's physically possible." Immediately he says, "Alright, so how about the other 2 projects? Project Annihilation, Project Moonlight." Immediately he says, "Project Annihilation, the suit you asked me to build you. Well, the suit can't really hold all of your power. It can hold a decent amount. It can also amplify it with the boosted gear in mind. So you can also get your boosted gear removed and put into the suit, and Drake can take the suit if you'd like." And immediately Issei says, I'll just do that." He walks up behind the scientist and sees the suit on display. It's a completely samurai-type suit with completely black and gold accents. He immediately puts his hand towards the middle of it where the heart is and says, "Hey to Drake, try to transfer yourself to this metal armor." The Drake pops on and says, "Okay, partner, I'll try." He transfers part of himself into it, but then he feels his entire being sucked into the suit. He immediately feels like he's being drained out of Issei. Issei feels a little woozy when this is happening. He immediately says, "Hey to Drake, could you hurry this up? I think I might collapse if you don't hurry up." While Drake says, "Alright." He pushes himself through into the suit. Immediately, the suit starts turning red and gold. While the Drake whispers out, "I have a body again?" And he just starts jumping up and down like a little kid, while Issei says, "Knock it off, the Drake. You moving so much is giving me a goddamn headache," as he puts his hand towards his head. And then he immediately realizes, hold up, my hand's back. My normal hand. I thought I gave up my hand in that fight with Riser. Why is it back? While the scientist Akil walks beside him and says, "Well, it's because you unlocked some of the Drake's power in exchange for your arm. Considering that he was removed from you, it's only right that the power would be reversed. So your arm will be put back because you're no longer using his power." Issei immediately says, "Well, that's quite good. Hand me the syringe already." He puts the syringe into Izuku's hands, and he immediately says, "Oh, also, to Drake, you should get accustomed to that body. The Drake says, hey, I can still kick your ass in this body. And immediately, Issei looks at him and says, oh, really? Well, the Drake says, yeah, really. And Issei says, all right, then go ahead and take your best shot. Go ahead and, like, walk towards me. Give me one good punch, and I'll decide that. The Drake immediately says, you're going to regret this. He starts to try to walk one time, and then just falls to the ground, face plants. He, like, tripped over a little pebble inside the lab, and he face plants, while immediately Issei is just looking at him with a blank expression, and then he just starts laughing. Like, he's on the ground rolling over laughing, while everyone, even all the scientists, are laughing at him right now. The Drake says, this walking thing is harder than it actually seems, especially when I only have 2 legs. While Issei says, oh my god, the Drake, you should practice walking, or maybe, crawling first before even thinking about sparring with me. Oh my god. Like, he's just bursting out laughing, while Maria, who's in the control room's also laughing at this. And immediately Issei just gets up, composes himself, and just walks towards the elevator and says, the Drake, make sure you get some good training in. After all, it's been a while since I had a training partner. While the Drake just looks at him and says, alright, Issei, also don't go too far over that line that you crossed. While Izuku gains a serious face and looks at him before the elevators close and says, I'll never cross that line between man and a monster. That's where I'm going to end What If Issei Snapped His Limiter. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure you smash that like button, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you